Tonight, we are exposing 3 Australian steakhouse chains charging $50 for steaks diners say are not worth 10, and revealing 3 spots where the beef actually lives up to the bill. Stay with me to learn how to spot the premium traps and ensure your next steak splurge is not wasted on marketing. We assume a $50 or $80 steak guarantees serious quality, better marbling and expert grilling. But the reality in many big chains is you are just funding their decor and rent. When diners complain about paying top dollar for cold, underweight, badly seasoned and overcooked meat, the illusion shatters. You are paying for the brand, not the beef. Let us put 3 familiar chains under the spotlight and stand them next to 3 real steakhouses that still treat beef as a craft, so you never get ripped off on steak night again. Number 1. Rashays. $45 steak that arrives cold and chewy. Rashays is everywhere. You see the signs in suburban shopping centers and highway strips. Big, bright dining rooms, neon colors, booths, big plates, giant desserts, family deals, and endless social media content. They pitch themselves as casual, affordable, and something for everyone. And steaks feature heavily on the menu as a hero item. But when you leave the marketing and read what actual Australians are saying online, a different picture emerges. On Reddit, one highly upvoted post says very bluntly that Rashays has to be the worst food chain in Australia, calling it overpriced, high-fat, high-salt, low-quality food, with terrible service due to inadequate management and stretched staff. Other comments in that same discussion talk about paying more than $20 for an average-sized plastic container of pasta and being shocked at how quickly the prices climbed while quality did not. For steak specifically, diners describe experiences that go way beyond a bad night. One person explains that they ordered steak through a delivery app from Rashays, paid $45, and what turned up an hour late was cold and way under the weight specified on the bill. They then report terrible food poisoning that lasted half a week and finish with the line, "Will not be repeating that mistake." Others say that if you ask for a medium rare steak, you will get an overcooked piece of rubber, never again. All that matters, because it shows a pattern, is not just one-off complaints about a busy night. It is multiple diners in multiple years saying the same thing. The food is expensive for what it is, heavy on fats and salt, inconsistent in quality, and the basic ability to deliver a steak hot, at the advertised size and at the requested doneness, is not something you can rely on. So what does that actually mean for your plate and your bank account? You are paying $40 to $50 in many cases for a 200-gram steak that some diners say arrives overcooked, dry or chewy, with inconsistent portion sizes that feel smaller than what is advertised. You are absorbing the hidden cost of chaotic, understaffed service, long waits, incorrect orders, cold food, and stress at the table instead of pleasure. On the front of the menu, the story is affordable family restaurant, big range, good value steaks and something for everyone. In practice, many Australians describe it as fast, casual chain food at serious steakhouse prices, where you pay steakhouse money for what feels like reheated food court quality and the risk of a bad night. If that sounds like a one-off brand that lost its way, it is not. The second name on this list proves that the same pattern can show up at the glossy, fine dining end of town. Number 2, Grill Americano in Melbourne, when luxe prices meet very average plates. In Melbourne, Grill Americano looks like the sort of place you go to impress people. It has a prime central business district address on Flinders Lane, a beautiful, moody interior, high ceilings, leather banquettes, a bar that glows, and a name that whispers New York, steak, and old-school glamour. The menu combines Italian dishes with a full grill section, and this is where the steak prices start to climb. TripAdvisor reviews and photos show that mains at Grill Americano easily push into the upper double digits. Detailed reviews talk about steaks starting around the high 60s and stretching upwards into 3 figures for the top cuts, while the wine list has barely a bottle under $85, with many wines running into the hundreds. At that level, a restaurant is making a promise. Those kinds of prices can be justified if the beef is genuinely world-class, the cooking is perfect, the service is gracious and precise, and every detail makes you feel looked after. But that is not what all diners are experiencing. On TripAdvisor, Grill Americano sits around 3.1 out of 5, and a detailed 2025 review is literally titled, "Way Too Pricey for Very Average Food." In that review, the diner explains that there was barely a wine for less than $85, that most wines were far into the hundreds, and then delivers the core verdict: you are paying huge prices for very average food and service, and if you like being ripped off, Grill Americano is ideal. Other diners describe spending around $400 for 2 people, enjoying the ambience and finding the food nice but not brilliant, with customer service that felt cold, passive-aggressive and rude, which is the exact opposite of what you expect at that price point. They talk about seafood platters with slimy, pulpy prawns that had to be taken off the bill, and a sense that other restaurants in the same lane delivered far better quality and value. What that tells you is simple. At the very top end of town, there is a restaurant using fine dining pricing and decor, but multiple paying customers are walking out saying the food and service are no better, and often worse, than other venues in the same street that charge less. You are paying a luxury tax for ambiance and postcode, while the steak and the overall experience lag behind what a serious grill should deliver at those numbers. If you're going to hand over $300 or $400 for dinner, you deserve more than nice enough. You deserve food and service that feel undeniably special. When you come away thinking you could have eaten as well, or better somewhere else for less, that is the definition of overpaying for the brand, not the beef. Number 3. Lone Star Rib House. Mid-range prices, mid-steak. Might as well go to Rockpool. Lone Star Rib House is not trying to be fine dining. It is selling a fantasy. Texas Roadhouse decor, peanut shells, Americano on the walls, big ribs, burgers, wings, and of course steaks. On paper, it is the perfect casual night out. Fun vibe, huge portions, something for everyone. But when steak lovers actually sit down and compare what they paid with what they got, the cracks appear. On Yelp, a detailed review of a Lone Star location in Success, Western Australia, says steaks were on the pricier side, up to $40, and drops this killer line: "If I'm going to pay that much, I might as well go to Rockpool." That is someone explicitly saying the steakhouse prices are getting close to what you might pay at a top-tier grill. But the food does not feel in the same universe. In that review, the writer describes the burger and schnitzel they had instead as reasonably sized and tasting nice, but not, oh my God, amazing, just the sort of meal you could happily eat again without feeling blown away. Other reviews across locations talk about very sweet ribs that become sickly, steaks with a lot of fat and gristle, stingy sides like half a small potato, and bills over $100 for 2 people that left diners disappointed in the value. So what are you really paying for? You are paying $35 to $40 for a rump or ribeye in a themed room built around novelty and nostalgia. You are paying for play equipment near the tables and a family-friendly vibe, and for food that many people rate as fine, not unforgettable. On the menu, Lone Star reads like big Texan steak experience. In reality, a lot of Australians feel like it is pub-grade steak at near-premium prices. And if you are going to spend that much, you might as well go somewhere that actually worships the beef, or stay home and cook something better for yourself. By now, the pattern on the rip-off side should be clear. You have bright chains and glamour grills charging serious money, while too many diners walk out thinking, that was not worth it. This is not about being snobby. It is about value. If you are going to pay steakhouse money, you should get steakhouse quality. So where do you go if you do not want to overpay for underwhelming meat? Let us flip to the other side of the ledger. Now let us talk about the Australian steak spots that are actually worth your time. Number 4, Kingsley's Steakhouse in Sydney. Dry-aged, pasture-fed and priced to the process, Kingsley's Australian Steakhouse in Sydney has been around for years, and it has something a lot of chains do not: a clear story about its beef. A detailed review from a steak-focused blog describes ordering a Haverick's dry-aged rib on bone, pasture-fed from New South Wales, 400 grams. That one menu line tells you almost everything you need to know. Supplier, Haverick Meats, a respected high-end wholesaler that deals in serious restaurant-grade beef. Process: dry-aged, which means the whole beef primal is hung in a temperature and humidity-controlled room, slowly drying on the outside while enzymes break down the muscle inside, developing a nutty, intense flavor and increasing tenderness. Origin: pasture-fed New South Wales beef, not anonymous imported strip loin from a feedlot. Dry aging matters because it costs the restaurant money. As the meat ages, moisture evaporates and the outside crust dries out and is trimmed away before serving. That means each primal loses weight that can never be sold. If a restaurant is still choosing to dry age, it is sacrificing yield in order to increase flavor and improve texture. In that same Kingsley's review, the writer says the ribeye did not disappoint, that despite being pasture-fed, it was really tender due to the dry aging process, and notes that colleagues ordering other serious cuts had equally positive experiences. On TripAdvisor, people talk about steaks cooked perfectly medium rare, dry-aged ribs on bone with rich flavor, and describe Kingsley's as one of the best steaks in Sydney so far. So when Kingsley's charges somewhere around $50 for a speciality rib on bone, you can see where the money is going. It is going to the farmer, to the dry aging room that slowly transforms the beef, and to the grill cook who hits your requested doneness on a serious cut. You're not paying for an influencer wall, you are paying for the process. Number 5, Rockpool Bar and Grill, pasture-to-plate Wagyu that backs up the price. Rockpool Bar and Grill does not pretend to be cheap, but at least it is honest about why it costs what it does. On Rockpool's own site, they describe their partnership with Pure Wagyu from Tasmania as a pasture-to-plate journey. Pure Wagyu originates from Tasmania's pristine pastures, with clean air, high rainfall and lush, natural grazing lands. Rockpool explains that the cattle are raised with ethical farming practices and full traceability, that their age at maturity and the way they are fed are carefully controlled to develop the right marbling, tenderness and flavor. In other words, this is not commodity beef. It is a specific herd on specific land, raised to a specific standard. At Rockpool, those pure Wagyu primals are then dry-aged in-house, just like the Kingsley's cuts, to further deepen flavor and texture. Finally, they are cooked over Rockpool's signature wood-fired grills with chefs who specialize in steak grilling. Every step, from pasture selection to dry aging room to grill, is chosen to make the steak better, not cheaper. Rockpool openly positions itself as the pinnacle of steak, dining in cities like Sydney, Melbourne and Perth, promising an elevated experience that is truly second to none. They are saying, in effect, if you are going to spend a large amount of money on a steak once or twice a year, this is where it should go. There is a huge difference between $150 for a steak that is carefully raised, aged and grilled over wood fire with full traceability, and $50 for a chain steak diners describe as rubbery, underweight or very average. If you're going to blow the budget, Rockpool is at least an example of steak treated as an art form rather than a menu line. Number 6, Meat and Wine. Black Hide and other serious steak specialists. The third group on the honest side is not just one venue, but a type of restaurant, serious steak specialists that build their whole identity around beef. Take the Meat and Wine Co. in Sydney as one example. In a popular food vlog, two regulars show themselves ordering the $86 Wagyu ribeye and describe it as one of the best steaks they have ever had, super juicy, melt in your mouth with a perfect crust. They explicitly say they would save up for that specific steak again, and tell viewers not to order the cheaper steaks at the same restaurant because those were quite dry and chewy by comparison. That kind of review actually tells you a lot. It says this is a place where one or two hero cuts are genuinely special and where you need to know what to order, but where your money, if aimed at the right steak, does buy you something memorable. Now look at Black Hide Steakhouse by Gambaro in Brisbane. A Galt and Millau write-up explains that Black Hide has an exclusive partnership with Stanbrook, one of the biggest vertically integrated beef companies in the world, to provide diners with prime organic, Wagyu and Angus steak cuts. They describe Black Hide's use of an authentic Montague broiler grill in an open kitchen, a high-intensity, high-speed cooking method designed to sear the outside while keeping the inside juicy. The same document says guests at Black Hide can choose from around 12 different beef cuts across Angus, Wagyu and organic breeds, all sourced through Stanbrook. You know exactly whose cattle you are eating, which breeds, and how they are cooked. What unites places like Meat and Wine Co., Black Hide, Kingsley's and Rockpool is that they all name their suppliers and are willing to talk openly about breed, feed, aging method and grill technology. Reviews of these spots often focus on specific steaks, saying things like this Wagyu ribeye was melt in your mouth, while another cheaper cut was a bit dry, which is exactly what you would expect when some steaks use rarer breeds or more careful aging. You still have to be smart because not every steak on any steakhouse menu is equal. Often one or two cuts are the true standouts, the ones the staff quietly recommend and the regulars rave about. But at least in these serious steak specialists, when you drop $60 to $100 on beef, you are paying for the cow, the farmer, the butcher, and the grill, not just for neon signs and Instagram walls. The pattern you cannot unsee. Put all six together, and the pattern is hard to unsee. On the rip-off side you have chains and glamour grills where diners say they paid $45 for a cold, underweight steak, nearly $50 for a 200-gram steak that was poorly cooked and seasoned, or over $400 for a meal where the food and service were way too pricey for what they received. These places lean on loud branding, huge menus and mountains of sides and sauces to distract from mid-tier meat. On the honest side you have shorter menus and clear focus on beef, named suppliers like Havricks, Stanbrook and Pure Wagyu, visible investment in dry aging rooms and proper grills, and a clear explanation, or at least a traceable story, of why a specific steak costs what it does. This is not just about one bad night out. It is a food culture problem. We went from a world where the local grill knew the cattle station to a world where you can be charged $50 for a 200-gram steak in a chain where regular diners are begging for basic things like correct doneness, reasonable weight and food arriving hot. At the same time, more of our diets have shifted toward ultra-processed foods, high in refined carbs, seed oils and additives. Large reviews in journals like the British Medical Journal link higher consumption of ultra-processed foods with higher risks of obesity, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular events and other chronic illnesses. When a steakhouse plate is mostly sauce, fries, onion rings and sugary drinks around a small, poorly cooked piece of beef, it starts to look a lot closer to junk food than to the nourishing, simple steak dinner we imagine. So how do you protect your plate and your wallet the next time you feel like steak? Your simple Australian steakhouse checklist before you book a table or order that $40 plus steak. Run through these quick checks in your head or on your phone. Do they name the producer or region? If the menu tells you names like Haverick Meats, Stanbrook Beef, Pure Wagyu, or clearly states O'Connor grass-fed, New South Wales or Tasmanian origin, that is a green flag. If all you see are lines like premium rump, chef's selection sirloin or house special ribeye with no further detail, that is a caution sign. You are being asked to pay for mystery beef. What are recent diners actually saying about value? Take 60 seconds to skim the latest reviews, not the ones from 5 years ago. If multiple people call it way too pricey for average food, complain that steaks are smaller than advertised, or say they left feeling ripped off, that is your sign to choose somewhere else. How big is the menu? Restaurants that try to do steak, ribs, burgers, pasta, pizza, schnitzel, tacos and more all at once are factories. They are optimized for volume, not for doing one thing exceptionally well. A focused grill with a handful of carefully described cuts plus simple sides usually cares more about the meat. Is there any mention of aging or grill type? Words like dry-aged, wet-aged, char-grilled over wood fire, Josper or Montague broiler tell you the restaurant is investing in technique. If there is no information at all about how the steak is aged or cooked, you are rolling the dice. What is your own benchmark? Think honestly about the best steak you can cook at home for $10 to $15 in ingredients. If a restaurant cannot clearly beat that on flavor, tenderness and overall experience, you should not be paying them $50 or more for a similar size piece of meat. When you use this checklist a few times, you will start to see the same red flags and green flags everywhere. The restaurants that respect steak will tell you about the beef. The ones that do not will tell you about the cocktails, the dessert tower, and the neon sign. Steak in Australia should be simple. A good animal raised well, a decent bit of aging, someone at the grill who knows what they are doing and cares about the result. But too many of us are walking into restaurants that charge $40 to $50 for small, overcooked, underwhelming steaks and lean on fit-out and vibes to distract from average beef. They rely on the idea that if the room feels expensive, you will not question the food on the plate. You do not have to stop eating out. You just have to stop rewarding the restaurants that see steak as a margin machine and start supporting the ones that see it as a craft. Next time you're about to drop serious cash on a steak, check. Do they tell you where the beef came from? Do recent diners say it was worth it? Could you get a clearly better experience, even if it means going somewhere smaller, more focused, or saving up a little longer? If this video helped you see the difference between $50 for $10 steak and $50 for the real deal, tap like so more Australians stop getting fleeced every date night. If you want more deep dives that protect your plate, your health and your family from the quiet tricks of Australia's food scene, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. That is how we keep making the videos the big chains will not love. Now tell me in the comments, which side of the list surprised you more? The chains overcharging for average meat, or the steak specialists actually earning their price tag? And what is your next move? Breaking up with a chain you have been tolerating, trying a serious steakhouse for the first time, or learning to cook a restaurant-level steak at home so you only go out when it is truly worth it?